You can write novels that receive critical praise and commercial success. You can be called one of the leading voices in the horror genre for decades. But there's a hard ceiling to the level of acknowledgement from the mainstream unless your work is adapted to other media. That usually means film and television. Stephen King's literary career was already going strong before the release of Brian De Palma's adaptation of Carrie in 1976, but it was that film that started his journey into a cultural icon. Kubrick's The Shining, Louis Teague's Cujo, David Cronenberg's The Dead Zone, and John Carpenter's Christine pretty much sealed the deal. That's not to say that film is more important than literature in the most important senses, but let's face it, movies are more popular. First off, it's simply easier to watch a movie than it is to read a novel. Second, it takes far less time. Books really never have stood a chance against cinema in a one-on-one cage match. But that's okay, or at least it can be okay, because a popular movie will lure a percentage of viewers back to the source material. King would have done just fine with or without movies, but it takes a profound sort of delusion to suggest that his readership would have grown to its modern heights. Robert R. McCammon was a strong contender for the silver medal in the late 1970s and throughout the 80s, the others being John Saul and Dean Koontz. And yet, Hollywood didn't come calling in the same way. McCammon's work is just as commercially viable. There's nothing about his novels and short stories that would keep an even larger audience at bay. But without that additional push from the movies, the best he could aspire was to be the first runner-up after King. It's not as if he wasn't adapted at all, though. On December 18th of 1981, the ABC horror anthology series Dark Room broadcast their adaptation of McCammon's story, Makeup. The episode was directed by Curtis Harrington, the director of Night Tide, What's the Matter with Helen, Whoever Slew Auntie Rue and Ruby. It starred Billy Crystal and Brian Dennehy. McCammon's story was adapted by Jeffrey Bloom, who wrote and directed Blood Beach and Nightmares. He also helmed the film adaptation of V.C. Andrews' Flowers in the Attic. Just shy of 4 years later, on October 18th, 1985, the CBS revival of The Twilight Zone aired Nightcrawlers as the third story of the fourth episode. McCammon's novelette originally appeared in J.N. Williamson's now legendary first volume of Masks. The adaptation stars James Whitmore Jr., who you'll definitely recognize from the TV series Rockford Files and Hunter. Music for Nightcrawlers was composed by Merle Saunders of the Grateful Dead. Huey Lewis plays harmonica on the track. I'm not making any of this up. Yeah, what the fuck? I might as well mention that punk rock icon Exene Cervenka plays the role of a waitress. How's that for an eclectic mix of talent? But wait, that's not the best part. Nightcrawlers was directed by William Friedkin. Difficult to imagine producers not lining up to produce more McCammon-inspired films, right? Especially considering his magnum opus epic novel, Swan Song, came out just 2 years later. If you were a horror reader in the 80s, you bought and read that novel. All of us did. And yet, no, it wouldn't be until September 22nd, 2024, when the Peacock streaming service unveiled Teacup, an 8-episode loose adaptation of McCammon's novel Stinger. It starred Yvonne Strahovski and Scott Speedman. Episodes were directed by VHS alumni Chloe Okuno and Universal Soldier sequels director John Hyams. It started off with great reviews, but oddly little hype, and it was canceled after a single season. But maybe there's still hope. A television series adaptation of Swan Song is in development from Greg Nicotero and Russell Rothberg. You know Nicotero from his K&B makeup effects days, as well as his gig as director and producer on The Walking Dead. Rothberg was executive producer on shows like American Gigolo and Nightfall. As of right now, Swansong does not have a distributing partner and has not begun production. It's a wonky, unpredictable business, so there's no telling if or when it'll make it to your television screen. A project of its scope really does need major backing to pull off. I guess we'll see. Robert McCammon's legacy is already cemented as one of the most accomplished commercial horror writers of his era. It would be nice if adaptations could bring more eyes to his work and establish him on an even higher tier in the public's consciousness. And the day is not yet done, so maybe a future film version of Boy's Life or Wolf's Hour will push him past that artificial ceiling.